Well, thank you, and thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals, and thanks especially to the host of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible event. We're of course thrilled to be.
Yeah, I know I'm picky about it, but what the heck is in the White House and those unbuttoned tags? Like him, Trump, and pretty much everyone around the Trump. Never ever they button at least one button. Like, come on. Again, I want to be picky, but it's just funny that now he's in Munich and he's doing it again.
Be here. We're happy to be here. And, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even as, of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with...
What the fuck happened yesterday? Okay, 1 second. What happened in Munich? Vance. Oh my god. The car drove through the crowd. Jesus Christ. 20 people injured. So, okay, what happened yesterday is the car in the Munich drove into the crowd of demonstrators in Munich. At least 20 people injured. Yeah. Man, Germany is just taking it left and right. It's brutal. Like, I feel for them. Obviously, I'm from Czech Republic, so Germany is one of my neighbors. I don't live in Czech Republic anymore, but I used to travel there a lot, especially to Munich. I was there like 5-6 times, and the people over there are great. Like, it's the different culture. It's typically European culture. People are kind of colder, but they're polite. If you talk to them, they're the nicest people. But yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like Germany, with immigration, like they just open the gates and let everyone flood into the country because of the guilt they have, because of the World War. Exactly, like Natalia says, Germany is so woke. They are trying so hard to make up for World War II. Yeah, that's what I think. Like, they're just trying to persuade everyone that's not who we are, and they just let everyone into the country. And what's going on over there right now is crazy. And this is, I would say that 20 injured people, that's not even one of the more serious things that's going on there in last few years, or what happened there in last few years. But yeah, anyway, sorry for interrupting this, but I was really curious what happened in Munich, and it's tragedy. And yeah, unfortunately, it's not that uncommon in Germany nowadays. But yeah, let's continue with JD.
Was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now,
yeah.
I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but We gather
It might.
at
It
this
might be.
conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor.
Let's see. Who's that? Who's that? I mean, he said not any external actor, right? So probably countries on its own, the leaders, the corruption, something like that. And I would definitely agree, right? Like Trump is right now cleaning up US, and the whole Europe should do the same because it's ridiculous. And I feel like the war in Ukraine just proved it, that corruption's everywhere. But yeah, let's see what he's going to say.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
Yeah.
Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election.
Oh, I know. It's going to be about a free speech. And they're definitely right. But do you know where they got the example of all of these restrictions and pretty much no free speech? US. COVID, Biden administration. And yeah, I hope they're going to take example again from Trump's administration and get rid of all of the bullshit, right? Like DEI, fact checkers, and all of it. Because yeah, Europe always follows US, and unfortunately, not every time it's the best approach.
He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too.
What?
Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship.
Wait, sorry, if I understand it, so the European Commissar annulled the elections in Romania? I know Romania is in the European Union. I was very shocked about it when I found out a couple of years back. Yeah, because the corruption over there is high, right? And it's not easy to get to European Union. So I was very surprised. But definitely, no matter the corruption, I don't think that the European Union should include themselves into the election results. Like, yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team.
Yeah, like who decides it was corrupted or it was affected by some outside forces, right? Like, how do we know that the European Union doesn't have someone who's corrupted in there, or they don't do it for their own interest? Like, okay, let's annul this election. I really don't think it's correct approach, because even though European is organization that connects most of the European countries and tries to make the economy better, trade better, it's easier to travel outside and work in the different country, right? But it definitely shouldn't have a power like to annul elections. It's just for you guys who don't know, European Union is not the same like USA. It's not above states. Like, you're still your own state. It's just the organization where you belong to. And obviously there are some European Union laws that you should follow. but in the end, you still have, in the end, it's still your country, so you're still making decisions. Like this sounds crazy, and I had no idea that's what happened. Again, European Union doesn't work like US. It's not like you have multiple states, but there's one president. No. In European Union, every country is pretty much on its own. They just belong into the group that's supposed to help economically, help with the growth, and all of that stuff.
We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War.
Yeah, so I was born during communism. In 1989, my country was occupied by Russia. And one of the reasons, my name is spelled a little bit different. It's spelled Michal. And the reason why it's not spelled classically as a Michael is that it was not allowed during the communism. Also, I'm not baptized because it was frowned upon during communism. Also, I have immigrant stamp and all of this. Like, the times were really bad back then. And yeah, thank God those people or that country lost, right? So yeah, I kind of know what he's talking about. I mean, I was very little, but still, I heard about it my whole life, how it was during the communism, because everyone in Czech Republic was afraid that it's going to come back, because we still have Communist Party. And for like 20 years, the people were trying to make sure that the newer generation is not going to lean towards them, because some of the ideas that you hear from the Communist Party is not that bad, especially given nowadays economical situation, right? Back then, when you start family, you get a car, you get a discounted apartment, like for some ridiculous price. Who wouldn't like that nowadays? But it came with so much other stuff, like you weren't able to travel outside of the country without some special permission. You had to wait in the queue to get the freaking bananas. My great grandma was a political prisoner. They took our land, like shit like that, right? It's good to remember how it was, even when I did not really experience it. Oh, what's an immigrant stamp? So it was this vaccination that nowadays I think it's proven that it never really worked. It's on the arm over there, and it's pretty much scar. So what they did, they injected the acid to the skin, and it just burned the skin. And that's how you can tell that people are pretty much from Eastern Europe. Yeah, kind of fun. Okay, anyway, let's go with JD again.
They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected.
It's funny to hear that. Again, obviously, Trump's administration is not behind COVID. But the situation Europe is in right now, they just followed the US example. Remember during the COVID, we weren't allowed to think in Northern America. Like you get banned on the Facebook, on the Twitter if you had a different opinion about COVID. So it's incredible to hear that. And again, I hope Trump is gonna change everything. So far, he's doing everything he can to get rid of these old Biden administration habits. And hopefully the Europe will follow the example as well. Because apparently a lot of fact checkers know freedom of speech. That's how the Europe rolls right now.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action.
Wait. I know that the cops are watching Facebook and obviously the US FBI, CIA, whatever, right? But that the cops are actually going against the people who say something that's... Sorry, my bad. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, that the cops are actually going against something or someone who says something against feminism. That's crazy. And the hate speech, I feel like Musk just solved it the best on the Twitter. Just allow everyone to say whatever they want. And obviously, you see a lot of stuff that is probably not best to see, but you can create your own opinion about it, right? And unless it's literally just something like an inspiring violence or terrorism or something like that, I think it's okay for everything else to be freely on the Twitter, because then people will choose what they want to follow, make their own opinion, what's good, what's bad. And I feel like so many times if you ban something, you actually give it more attention, more publicity, and in the end it turns out that it wasn't the best idea to ban stuff, right? Anyway, let's go.
I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly,
I need to listen to this again.
Our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where anything without risking offending Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And
wait, what? What is that bullshit? Obviously, you can offend someone with the freedom of the speech, but you should be protected against the violence going against you, right? That's why you have cops, that's why you have laws and all of that bullshit. It's not like you say something and someone can come and kill you for that. Like, that's stupid. Don't get me wrong, like, burning some religious book, it's bad, should not be done publicly. Not even at home, but if you want to do it at home, whatever, right? But like publicly, that's I feel like that's kind of on the edge of inspiring violence, and yeah, I wouldn't say terrorism, but it's definitely on the edge, and it shouldn't be okay. I feel like the guy, if he did it publicly on the YouTube, social media, whatever, I feel like he might get, or he should get, prosecuted for something like that. But what the judge said, that freedom of speech doesn't protect him against, well, obviously it doesn't protect him against consequences, but if someone goes and kills his friend because of this, like, that's not okay. It's still murder, right? It's not like, well, he burned Quran, so I decided to kill him. Okay, you're right, that's valid example. Or that's valid reason. No, like bullshit, right? Obviously, you have freedom of speech and you have consequences, but it still needs to be within the law. Like, this is ridiculous.
Perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own.
Wait, what? And they charged him because he was praying for all of the unborn kids? All of the kids that were pretty much killed, not given chance to live normal life because of the... Okay, so about abortion, there's a lot of studies, research that only like 5% is actually because of the rape. So that means 95% is because of the parents of the unborn kid are just stupid. I'm sorry, but that's it. Either they were irresponsible or just don't want a kid. Like, it's just their preference, right? So to me, that's murder. I'm sorry, but yeah. And you want to tell me that this guy got charged for standing in front 50 meters away from the abortion clinic and praying for all of these poor babies that are getting murdered? And they charged him, like, criminal charges against him. How did it even get to the court? Like, what are we talking about? This guy escaped to Sweden, where he is resident, and then Sweden allowed these illegal immigrants in, and they found him and killed him in his own country. So this is about the Sweden case, where he's resident. Jesus Christ. So the guy in the Sweden was killed by illegal immigrants in his own country. And Sweden court is pretty much on the side of the murderers, or it's kind of like, well, you shouldn't have done it. This is your consequence. Whatever, the laws won't protect you. No, it sounds ridiculous to me. I really don't recognize Europe, and like, where did the common sense go? Yeah, I know it was for burning Quran. Again, I don't really think anyone should publicly burn the religious books, either publicly or on the social media. I think they should get fined for that, at least, because yeah, that can inspire violence. And obviously they're gonna get some hate, but they should still be protected by the law and the police for this. Like, yeah, you made a mistake, so let someone burn your book, but not to kill him, right? Like, he should still be protected by his own country. But yeah, let's see what JD says about the UK. I'm pretty sure he's against abortion as well, because he's Christian family. I think he has 2 kids. Like, that's what I like about him, that he's so family oriented. And obviously, listening to him speak, he's so intelligent and so logical.
After British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility.
What the fuck are you talking about? What? So he can't legally pray in front of the abortion clinic? What? And I'm sorry, they're talking about influencing the women who are planning to go for abortion. What do you think is going to happen when they get into the clinic? If they have second thoughts or something, isn't that influencing them as well? Just seeing the whole waiting room full of other girls who are in the same situation? Or just seeing doctors saying how it's okay? Like, that's all also influencing. What's wrong with you, UK? Like, what?
He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law.
Sorry, that went the wrong way. What? Even private prayer? So even when they're in their own house and praying, it's against the law? I mean, let me tell you, it's nice to hear that the Scotland is so religious. That's definitely good. Because otherwise, this law is just so illogical. Like, you're openly admitting that the God exists and you're religious if this is in your law, that you can't even have a private prayer. But let's talk a little bit more about the UK situation again. The keyword JD said about the law is silent prayer. So they don't even know what the guy is praying for. And he said that the cops had to ask him, what are we talking about? How is this real? Like, that's ridiculous. So we have silent prayer, we have a private prayer in your own house, not allowed. That sounds almost worse than Soviet Union. Obviously, not in the big scope, but I don't even think you had these issues during communism. Obviously, you had bigger issues. Like, I'm not comparing it, but it's something I don't even think the communists come up with. Like, oh, you can't even pray at home. I don't know. Yeah, maybe they banned the religion as a whole, but how do you even prove that someone's privately praying in those safe zones in Scotland?
Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Thought crime.
And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and
Man, I love this guy. No way he said it. I mean, we all know that they're against Biden's administration, obviously, right? But I did not expect that he's gonna take responsibility, because in the end, it's US, right? If you talk about Europe as a whole, you have to talk about US, even when you weren't on the side of Biden. And I just love that he's mentioning it. I said it at the beginning of the video, and now JD is freaking saying it. I love this guy.
bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaped from...
Here we go. Oh, my man.
Leaked from a laboratory in China, our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite. And I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
See, and that's the difference. Like, you saw a lot of about USAID, how they supported all of these DEI causes, and don't get me wrong, I'm against DEI, but supporting it was pretty much supporting censorship as well, supporting how is it called, discrimination, kind of a reverse discrimination in this case, right? And Washington was just sending millions all over the world to support this. And it's ridiculous because why did they do it? What was it good for? Definitely not for US, definitely not good for Europe. Like, there had to be some private interest or anything like that. But anyway, why I'm saying it is that it's so refreshing to hear that Trump's administration will try to support freedom of speech, while Biden's administration was literally going against it. So yeah, it's again W, man. Every time JD speaks in Europe, it's just a big W. I know a lot of Europeans will get outraged, probably, but yeah, just take the passion out of it. Just look what's going on in your own country, and you'll see that he's right. Look at them. Look at them old dudes not clapping. Everyone's kind of shocked. Everyone's taking it personally. Everyone's afraid of the change, and they don't even realize that everything changed 4 years ago, and they just went with it. And that's the craziest thing. Like the changes that happened during coronavirus, without us realizing it, I'm still speechless over it.
Now we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
I don't know if I agree with this. I've never been in Romania. I know a couple of Romanians, and I know a lot of people from different countries from my times as a flight attendant, and everyone will tell you that that their home country is corrupted, right? But to be fair, I don't think it was just advertisements and stuff. But that being said, again, like the corruptions there was there. Election should still be valid. Like, it's people voting. Maybe some votes are bought or whatever, but I don't feel like European Union should have any right to go there and try to persuade them to cancel the election. That's just wrong.
Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still, which of course brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency.
That's the thing. That's the biggest issue nowadays, that most of the politicians think about themselves like they're celebrities, and they forget who they actually represent. They forget who elected them and why. Like it's really bad, and it's all over the world, obviously, right? And yeah, so you get elected by people to work for them. You're not their leader or anything. You're their representative. It's like you're supposed to represent their, how is it word? Their interest, not your own interest, maybe the interest of the country, but most importantly of the citizenship, of the people who elected you. So it's ridiculous. And if you look at, again, example, my own country, once we got rid of communism, obviously you have different political parties, but it's not black and white. Like those political parties still need to work together, even though they represent completely different things, let's say. But back in the day, they still had to learn how to compromise, how to lead the country together. Yes, we had one president, which is completely a representative role in my country. We have prime minister, which, yeah, important guy, but in the end he still needs to get votes. And back in the day you didn't really have majority or minority. Like they had to work together to get the law, to create the law, whatever. And nowadays, even if you look at the US, like all of these majorities, Trump is great. Trump is great. I'm going to say Trump is great. He works with RFK, like he works with different political parties. He seems to understand that the truth is not only right or left, even though Republicans are on the right track compared to Democrats, right? But sometimes you need to compromise. Sometimes the best is from both sides, from both worlds. That's what's best for the people. And I feel like Trump understands it. But all over the world, even in Canada, it seems like people just forgot about it. Everyone's like, it's either my way or highway. Like we don't have any side roads or any, stuff like this.
It is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way, or even worse, win an election.
Yeah.
Now, this is a security conference. And
like I said, it's not black and white. And it's definitely nice when you have majority of the votes and you can go with the laws you want to go, but you should listen to the both parties. And I feel like the best thing for the country in general is when you're both, like, let's say Democrats and Republicans, when it's close to 50-50, when they need each other to get the law in effect, because then you get the best out of both worlds. Then they need to cooperate. I mean, again, looking at the US and the interest of Democrats, the identity politics and all of that, it kind of makes me regret what I'm saying right now. But yeah, the life is about compromising. Whatever is it, politics, work, marriage. Like you always need to listen to the both sides and make the decision that's best for whoever you represent.
And I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger.
Yeah, no, this is true as well. Like, it was ridiculous last couple of years. Well, not couple, like 10, 15 years. It felt like Europe was just depending on the US to protect them against Russian aggression or something like that. Like, you have so many US bases within the Europe. I think I don't know if it happened, we were dealing about having a US base in Czech Republic. And I know the radar went through, but I don't know if the military base went through, because obviously Russia was against it. Some people were against it. I don't know if we ended up having a referendum or no. But yeah, it definitely looks like Europe was depending on US to protect them if something happens. And that's ridiculous. Like, in the ideal world, you don't need to have army, right? Not every country needs to have army. But we don't live in ideal world. And depending on the US it's not the best choice. Like, look at Trump and his tariffs. Now it kind of sounds like it's justified, right? Because like US did so much for Europe and so much for the countries around. And how did these countries repay them? They didn't. So those tariffs, however, it's painful for me to say, because then we're gonna suffer. The normal people will end up paying more. But yeah, it might be true that the whole world was kind of using US and using their culture, their intention to help. And yeah, I don't think they treated, like, Europe definitely didn't repay US. And yeah.
But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we're defending in the first place? I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me.
Okay, let's be honest about it. Normal people don't care about having army. They don't care about country being well protected against Russia. Like, don't get me wrong, they do. They care. They want their country to be safe. But what they need is to be able to afford food, gas, some housing, to afford having family, right? Once you have all of these things, once you have good lifestyle, once you have something to protect, that's when people will care about having army, spending on the army, all of that, right? Like, you need to protect quality of the life of your citizens. If they don't have any quality of the life right now, what are you protecting? You're just taking more money away from the hardworking people. And for what reason? It's not a good situation anywhere. And the worst thing is that to me, it's corruption. I'm pretty sure he's gonna talk about one thing I would like to mention right now, but I'll give a JD chance.
And certainly, I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making.
Yep.
If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump.
Oh man, people are not happy with his speech, but he's right. Like, just clean up your own country before you start thinking internationally. And that's what the US is doing right now. Like, I'm sorry, you can't continue sending crazy amounts of money to Ukraine when your own citizens are suffering. And that's not the worst thing. That money that's going to Ukraine is from taxpayers' pocket. So let's say in Canada, monthly, with income tax, general sales tax, and all of that, I pay almost 50% taxes. And God knows how much from that goes to help outside of Canada. Like, I'm sorry, if I paid that much for the taxes, I want my quality of life get better. Like, okay, you're taking 50% out. Well, I want cheap groceries, I want cheap gas, I want cheap housing, because you're literally taking half of what I make. So don't take it away from me and send it somewhere else where it's no good for me. Like, once I have cheap groceries, cheap gas, like I'm having a good life where I don't struggle, where I don't live salary to salary. I'm not afraid of any emergency because I have a lot of animals, I have sons and everything. You never know what's gonna happen, right? Knock on the wood. But like, once I have all of this, that I'm not stressed about financial situation and whatever, then help whoever you want. But if now you're taking my money to help someone else when pretty much every single Canadian needs help, that's just ridiculous. Like, don't send money outside of the country until you clean your own country.
You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need
Oh man, affordable energy, that's another crazy thing. So look, in Canada, we have our own gas, like gasoline, oil, whatever you want to call it. But what they do is to sell it outside of the Canada and then buy it from outside for the Canadians just to make a freaking profit. And that's why the prices are so high. Like, what? Why do I need to buy a gas from Middle East when literally on my drive to work I see so many how you call it? So many oil fields. Like, why? Why do I need to buy it from the Middle East with some distribution fee, taxes, import fee, whatever, when it's literally in my province over here? That's ridiculous. And that's why we need the politicians to do better. And that's why I think, even though the tariffs right now look scary for the Canadians, what Canada needs to realize, and hopefully our future prime minister knows this, is okay, let's not depend on the export import, because we have something in our own country, right? So how he's talking about affordable energy, why is it such a big issue? Like, every country has something, and I'm pretty sure every country is able to produce some type of energy they can use. But the biggest issue is that they're selling it, trying to make profit, and then someone else will make the profit on your own citizens. How is that correct? Again, sounds like treason to me. That's wrong. Like, what the hell is this?
Mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail.
Yeah.
Whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is.
Here we go. Germany and mass migration. Again, I'm going to voice what I said and what one of my viewers said. I think Germany is the case on its own. I don't think you can really compare it to other European countries because Germany has this, I'm going to call it Nazi guilt. We all know what happened during World War II. And I personally think that's why Germany just opened the borders and let everyone in. And it wasn't a good choice. Like, you still need to protect your borders. You still need to know who's coming to your country. Whatever happened in the past is past. It shouldn't be forget. We need to remember what happened so we can prevent it from happening again. But the Germans that are alive nowadays have nothing to do with what happened in World War II. So now, because of some guilt from the past, you're pretty much making their lives harder, unsafe, and all of this. Like, that's such a bad decision by the German government, and it's been happening for 20 years right now, and all of these terrorist attacks, driving into the crowds, stabbing, shooting, you always end up hearing that it was someone who immigrated into Germany.
Is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city.
Yep.
And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
But we all know why it happened. And again, it kind of brings me back to Biden's administration. Like, Europe used to be, not talking about Germany. Let's get over this Nazi guilt. Let's just talk about Europe as a whole. Europe used to be pretty logical. They were few years behind US. Obviously, they looked up to US. But the progress in Europe was a little bit slower. we were all frustrated with it, right? The quality of life was always a little bit lower than in US. But now looking at it from retrospective, it wasn't bad to see what's going to happen to US before you actually do the same thing in Europe, right? And again, COVID happened, Biden happened, a lot of changes that were kind of secretly hidden behind COVID. And out of nowhere, if you say something against immigration, um, automatically it's hate speech. And you can literally say, like, oh, yeah, I would prefer that we, I don't know, we're a little bit more careful with our immigration laws. Like, let's do the background checks on them or something like that before we send them to the country, right? Out of nowhere, you're hateful towards immigrants and blah, blah, blah. You're the bad person. And you're the bad person only because you want to live in the safe country, right? And that's all that happened within last 4 years. This like public opinion that if you voice the opinion that's not the same as the majority, somehow you're this evil person and you need to be cancelled. And unfortunately, it all came from US. Again, back in the day when I still lived in Europe, it was okay to voice your own opinion. Not everyone had to agree with it. Maybe you're gonna get some bad looks, but no one's gonna cancel you. It's not gonna threaten your work or anything. And it all changed from 2020 to 2024, and now we can only hope that it's gonna change back to where it was. But again, you'll see how these guys don't like this. They don't like this opinion because it's probably gonna cost them some money, right? It's not what they want to do. It's not in their own interest for the most of the politicians. And like I said, just think about it logically. Take the passion away. It's about the people who represent, not about you.
But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it.
Yeah.
And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children.
Yeah.
And they're smart. I think this is one of the most important things I've learned in my brief time in politics. Contrary to what you might hear a couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy. And it's hardly surprising that they don't want to be shuffled about or relentlessly ignored by their leaders. And it is the business of democracy to adjudicate these big questions at the ballot box. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like Elon Musk is doing a good job cleaning the US and yeah, corruption that's going on there. The USAID, right? Mentioned on my every stream pretty much. But yeah, during the Biden's administration, somehow everyone was talking about the environment, which is valid. We should look into it. But now it again feels like a distraction because it doesn't feel like the politicians were actually trying to do something good for environment. It feels like they were trying to make profit again. Like, look, in Canada we have carbon tax. For what? How does it help? Did something change? No, they wanted to ban the gas cars or oil cars. Do you think they made electric cars cheaper? Do you think our income grew? Do you think the taxes went lower so we're able to afford it? No. So someone's just thinking about the profit and using every means they can. And for the last 4 years, it was environment. But let's be honest, we cannot do anything with environment until China decides, okay, maybe we should do something about environment. Because if we cut on the producing, on the commuting, on all of this, what do you think China's gonna do? Do you think they're gonna slow down? Probably no. What do you think these big corporations are gonna do? Are they gonna build stuff in Europe where it's gonna be more expensive and more regulations and all of that? Or are they gonna send it to China? And look, out of nowhere, the carbon footprint's gonna grow even worse because of who? The country that doesn't agree to try to lower the carbon footprint. So, yeah, again, I feel like environment was just a huge scam for the last 4 years, how to make profit for someone we don't know about.
But what German democracy, what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered.
When did this happen that people forgot that we choose the politicians, we elect them, like we have the power to fire them? Like, when did it change that we just started look up to them like they're our leaders, that we work for them and not that they work for us? Like, that's crazy to me that we forgot that, and I'm probably guilty of that as well. But all you need to do is go to the election or protest, demonstrate, obviously legally, nothing illegal, not blocking the roads or whatever. But like, people have the power, they just forgot about it.
Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
Great speech. JD just never lets you down, never disappoints. This guy, incredibly smart. I love his values, the family values and everything. He's just down to earth. But yeah, he's right about everything, and I bet majority of the people in the audience didn't want to hear it, didn't like this. But yeah, what else to say? Like, he's right. And yeah, JD Vance came from nothing. He worked himself up. And I really hope that's the future president of USA. And yeah, The funny thing, so this one's from Fox News, obviously, right? We see the title, VP Vance speaks in Munich as Trump seeks end to Ukraine war. Like, can Fox News be even more clickbaity? Like, he didn't mention anything about Ukraine. But anyway, I'm glad that I watched this video because yeah, this European tour, he's cooking, man. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked the stream or YouTube, please consider follow. Thanks. Have a good night.